Grade 5 CKLA, Domain 2 Reader. Chapter 4, Myths of the Maya. The big question of this chapter is, how does this sacred Maya myth explain the creation of its earth and its people? Thousands of years ago, people all around the world began telling stories to help explain how and why things happen. Some things, like the rising and setting of the sun, are predictable. Others, like floods and earthquakes, are often unpredictable. People created stories to make sense of both predictable and unpredictable events. Storytellers passed these symbolic stories or myths along from one generation to the next. The creation of the earth and its people. Some of the best known Maya myths are recorded in the Popol, or the sacred book of the Maya. Even though the original book was destroyed, some people knew the stories by heart. They told and retold the stories through the ages. In the mid-1500s, these Maya wrote the stories down for future generations. Today, you will read a retelling of combined creation myths taken from the Popol Vuh, the creation of the earth and the creation of the men of corn. In the beginning of time, all was still and motionless. There was only sea and sky. It was hard to tell where the sea ended and the sky began. Darkness filled the vast emptiness. There was no earth. There was no mountains or streams. There were no animals or people. The god of heavens asked gods Ch4 and Ch4 to help create a middle ground between sea and sky. They agreed. Together, the three became known as the creators and makers. Ch4 and Ch4 thought hard about what to create and how to create it. Finally, they came up with a plan. Dressed in brilliant green and blue feathers, they shouted out the word earth. In an instant, earth appeared. Part of the sea dried up and became land. Mountains rose up with valleys between their peaks. Then the gods added fresh water. Lakes pooled in the foothills of mountains. Rivers flowed from one end of the land to the other. Trees and plants sprang up along the riverbanks. Though beautiful, earth remained silent. It was too quiet. Ch4 and Ch4 decided to add noisemakers. Suddenly, animals of every description filled the land. Jaguars and pumbas crouched in the jungle. Deer and antelope roamed the plains. Snakes slithered along the ground. Eagles and turkey vultures perched high in the trees. The animals, screeching and roaring, broke the silence. The gods were pleased. Praise us for creating you, the gods begged of the animals. The animals just squawked, chattered, and howled in reply. Of what use are they? Ch4 and Ch4 asked. The gods wanted creatures to respect and honor them, to praise them and to make sacrifices to them. Because the animals were unable to do these things, the gods declared a new purpose for animals. Animals would be food for people in the future. The next task was to create the people who would eat the animals. First, Ch4 and Ch4 made people from clay. The gods were pleased with how they looked. But the clay people were unable to move. They could not lift their arms and bend their legs to walk. When the sun shone down upon them, the clay became soft and began to drip in the heat. When it rained, mud rolled off their gooey figures. Their mouths became mushy and it was difficult to understand their speech. They could not communicate and had no feelings. The gods decided to destroy these imperfect people. Next, Ch4 and Ch4 fashioned people out of wood. Surely wooden people would be much sturdier than clay if they could honor and nurture the gods as the gods wished. At first, the wooden people seemed fine. They looked like humans and talked like humans, and then began having children. Their sons and daughters spread out the mountains and valleys. But these rigid people did not develop well physically. Their wooden bodies began to warp. Without flesh and blood, the people were uncoordinated. Worst of all, they could not think. Without any memory of their creation, they made no effort to honor the gods with gifts of thanks. What good, the gods wondered, are these non-thinkers who wander aimlessly about the earth? Ch4 and Ch4 decided that these wooden people too must be destroyed. The gods unleashed boiling rains and mighty flood waters to drown the wooden people. They turned everything else on earth against the wooden people, including their tools, tortilla gritters, and grinding stones. Cooking pots and water jugs rose up to attack them. When they tried to escape, roofs and tree branches collapsed on them. Animals threw them out of caves. With no place to hide, the wooden people were soon defeated. It is said that a few did survive, but they live in the trees today. These creatures, called monkeys, resemble the people who were the first to walk on the earth. Neither clay nor wooden people served the gods as they intended. So Tepu and Kwakmans put their heads together once more. It was important to get it right on the third attempt. They asked some of the earth's animals for help. A wild cat, a coyote, a parrot, and a crow searched for the perfect place for humans to live. The animals found a beautiful setting with lots of fruits and seeds. There, they also discovered an abundance of spectacular yellow and white corn. The animals brought the corn back to Tepu and Kwakmans. Tepu and Kwakmans decided to create humans from this new food crop. So it was that the first men of corn came to be. Their flesh made from the corn kernels. Their grain was ground with earth or with water to shape the arms and legs of 4 men. They fed these men with the same plentiful crop with which they were made. These corn men seemed powerful indeed. They could hold on to things, move easily, and show feelings for one another. They could think, hear, speak, and see. In fact, their vision far surpassed that of the gods. They could see far into the distant heavens and deep into the ocean depths. The corn men praised the gods and thanked them for their remarkable gifts. Tepu and Kwakmans' third attempt at creating people was a success. Finally, these earthly creatures were grateful to their makers. This powerful jaguar here. As the top predators in the jungle, jaguars symbolize powerful beings. Gods wanted their new creations to be just as powerful, so they named the first corn men after the jaguar. But all was not well. The corn men's sight was so good that the gods became jealous of them. The gods did not want to share supernatural powers with earthly beings. They wanted to make sure that the gods remained more powerful than men on earth. So the gods decided to cloud the corn men's vision. They threw a mist over the corn men's eyes. Now the corn men would only see things nearby. By blocking their distant vision, the gods destroyed some of the corn men's wisdom and knowledge. When the corn men awoke the next day, they found corn women laying beside them. The gods had given them each a wife. Together with their wives, the corn people multiplied. In time, there were many nations of people. Some were light-skinned, others were dark. The people formed different classes and spoke many different languages. These multicultural people spread out across the land and filled every corner of it with praises for the gods. Tepu and Kwakmans thought back on their creation of earth. They thought about the clay people. They thought about the wooden people. They thought about the corn people. On their third try, they had succeeded. They had created a world of thinking people who were grateful for their lives. The God of heavens was pleased too. Now millions of creatures respected and honored the gods, praising them and making sacrifices to them. Pretty amazing story. Certainly interesting how it compares to other myths and legends and realities and truths, but thank you for joining me with this chapter. This is Mr. Bowling. I'll see you in the next one.